Hello again, back in the garage, and we're going to have another go at working at the Yamaha. I want to check the valve clearances because I know for a fact that I've never checked them, and I think the last time the bike was serviced in a Yamaha dealer was probably about 25 years ago, so they've never really been checked. So I'm going to start taking off the seat and the tank, and it says in the manual that you have to remove the fairing to get the cover off. I don't want to take the fairing off, so we'll try and get it off without taking the fairing off. And we'll check the clearances and see what we need. If we need to adjust them, we're going to have to get a valve tool, a shim removal tool, and then have to get a micrometer and buy shims, etc, etc, etc. So fingers crossed, I don't want any shims to be out of adjustment. It's also very cold here this morning, so there's no problem with the engine being cold. It was freezing all day yesterday. Sub-zero, that's below zero. Right, well, let's get to it. Okay. I can see why it says to remove the fairing, because there's not much space here, so right, well, that's all 8 of the rocker cover bolts removed. With the exception of there's a wee split at the edge of that. I don't know if you can see it, and that one there as well, the wee rubbers, but there were no visible leaks around the rocker cover, so I think they'll just be going back on again. I'm not going to start spending money needlessly. So we're going to try and get the cover off now. As I was saying, I think the fairing might have to come off to provide space to get that up out. The problem being these bolts and nuts here are very difficult to get back in again. This fairing has been repaired and it's not standard, and it's not easy. Getting those things back on and getting them tight is a disaster of a job, and I really if there's any way I could avoid doing it, I would. I might actually just take, if I can, unbolt the fairing there and just try and slide it forward a bit to save having to undo this, because it's just not worth the effort. I don't have a brass hammer or a soft face mallet, so I'll have to do this. Yeah, oh, there we go. That's it unstuck. I'm unbolting the fairing bracket at the front, and hopefully the whole thing will move forward. A little bit of movement. That's better. It's a bit messy, so I'm going to get this all cleaned up, and I might even put a lick of paint on it. Let's have a look at the camshafts. Now I'll have to say, and get a bit of light. Everything in there looks pristine. Yeah, that's looking good. That really is. Right, I'm going to remove the spark plugs so then I can turn the engine over easily without any compression, and I'll get the feeler gauges out and we'll check the clearances as we go. What I'm doing is the engine's in top gear and I'm turning the back wheel with my hand, which turns the engine over. So I've done the 4 inlets and they are within spec, 11, 13, 12 and 11. I'm going to do the exhaust valves now, which are the ones at the front, at the exhaust obviously, and they're a slightly greater clearance because they run hotter and then for they expand more, etc, etc. So I'm going to check these and I'll bring you back when I've them done. Right, well I've run round all the valves, the clearances, and I've measured them. The exhaust valve open. Let's see. No, you're not going to see it. Anyway, the plan is I am going to put something between the valve and the valve seat to stop the valve from returning back up again, and then leave me a gap at the top so I can take the shim out. Spun the engine back round again, and as you can see, there's a significant, as you might be able to see, there's a significant gap between the camshaft lobe and the shim. So I'm now going to try and flick this shim out with my picker tool. Give it a bit of a wipe. That's the bucket coming up, and the shim sits into a recess in the top of the bucket. Alright, that's the shim out of the bucket. Now I have to get the shim out altogether. I would say this job might be easier with 2 hands. Hold on. There we go. A nice oily shim. And apparently these are marked size on the bottom. Y280. So that shim is 280 and the shim is slightly too thick, which leaves the gap too small. So I need a smaller shim, a 275 or a 270. Let's see what we have. As if by magic, a 270 and a 275. Well, we'll start with a 275 and see if that gives us enough clearance. Looks to be the same. We'll put it with the number facing down and see if we can get it in there. It's what you might call an interference fit. Right, I'm going to spin the engine back round again and get that down into place. Well, that's it back round. The valve is now fully open, which means I can remove my cable tie. And I'll spin it round again, and then we'll check the clearance whenever we come onto the back of the cam. Okay, so we're looking for anywhere between 16 and 20. Here's a 15. Ah, lovely. The 15 goes in with plenty to spare. Oh, I love it when a plan comes together. By my reckoning, the 20 shouldn't go in, and it doesn't. Right, I've got a 10 and a 7. Yeah. Ten and a 7 got a bit to spare. That is absolutely perfect. I'm so pleased. Right, well, to get the rocker cover back on again and get her bolted down. Well, I decided that the rocker cover was in need of a wee bit of a refurbishment, so I took the night remorse to it, cleaned it all off, cleaned it up, and give it a lick of high temp paint and many coats of lacquer. It's still it's a bit dull, but it'll do. I'm not quite sure how you feel about silicone sealer, but I can't in my mind put this back on again without a wee drop of silicone sealer around the gasket, so I'm just going to put a very light skim the whole way around. The bolts for holding it down, obviously they've got rubber and a washer, so what I want to do is I want to get a wee bit of sealer in round here because the oil can creep up and come out over the top. So yet again, more silicone sealer, just a wee name. And that will seal itself on the way through. Oh, sorry, you didn't see that. I'll wipe off the excess. I have a couple here I'm going to start now. Right, I'm just going to run these down finger tight. And introducing my new friend, the 3/8 drive torque wrench, which torques from 5 to 25 Newton meters. The torque setting for the rocker cover bolts is 10, and I have this set at 10. It's not much of a click, but it is a click nonetheless. Newton meters, lovely. I also put some paint and lacquer onto the wee fairing brackets to give them a bit of a tidy up. They were very rusty, so I'm going to refit these now. They bolt on here, and the fairing bracket bolts on the top of them, there and there. So we'll get these bolted on and get the fairing back up in place.
Okay, that's those just run up finger tight. Right, I think it's about time we got the tank on. I've lubricated these wee rubbers that the tank sits on, so it should hopefully slide on a little bit easier than it came off. Okay, what do we like at the back? I wonder where to start. You like that? That's it. We're going to call it a night. Valve clearance is checked and adjusted, and wasn't too bad. Quite enjoyed that. Now we could do with another wee bit of dry weather. It's kind of cold. The roads are always wet here now. It's in between the 5 and 10 degrees Celsius, and the roads are just constantly damp and dirty. And the more I work at this, the less I want to take it out in a dirty day. So it's terrible, isn't it? I'm shooting myself in the foot every time. Right, well, we'll come back to it sometime again when we think of something else to do. In the meantime, look after yourselves and stay safe. All the best.